Hello everybody and welcome back. A whole bunch of you have seen So Biased's new video about making herself a COVID era mask, and a lot of you have asked for my opinion on it. So that's what this video is all about. If you have never been on my channel before, if this is your first time seeing me on a video, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I have been studying fashion design and fashion history most of my life at this point, and I actually did my dissertation on fashion history. Specifically, my dissertation was 1950 to 2050, the slow death of non-stretch fashion and how the COVID era put the final nail in the coffin. While my focus was on fashion rather than PPE, or personal protective equipment, excuse me, I did study masks as they did relate to fashion at the time, so I feel like I can speak about this subject. Now, for So Biased video, her tutorial is actually really good. I watched a few that are in archives while I was working on my degree, and what she shows in her video is actually a very common style of making masks from the early 21st century. So if you want to actually do some, historical costuming or dressing up, or if you just want a fun fashion accessory, her tutorial is actually a really good explanation of how to make a mask. A basic mask, but a mask. There are a lot of variations as well. But yeah, if you want to make a mask, I highly recommend watching her video. There's only one thing that I really disagree with in her video, so let's talk about that. Now, as for her research and the rest of her video, I really only have one main thing that I disagree with, and that is the assertion that people would have been making their own blue masks. And if you look back at images of the COVID era, you will see blue and white masks were incredibly common, and a lot of people wore that style of mask. This style of mask, yes, she relates it to underwear, and in a way it kind of is. Some people would choose to wear only a blue or white mask, and then some people would wear the blue and white mask and then put a fashion mask over it. And she has kind of conflated the two styles of mask in making her own blue satin mask. So when we talk about masks from the COVID era, there are basically two main types of masks. There are what we most often see in either a blue or a white mask, which is just your very most basic style. And this was not actually the type of thing that people would make at home. It actually could be considered part of the fast fashion of the era as well, because they were made incredibly cheaply. They were only meant to be worn excuse me, only meant to be worn once, maybe twice, and then they were meant to be disposed. And then there are the fashion masks, which either people would make for themselves or they would commission people who knew how to make them for them. And these type of masks tend to be very highly personal, showing off an interest that somebody has, or a sports team, or any other type of thing. But they, as I said, they are highly individual types of masks. And this kind, what I like to consider the fashion masks, because they are part of fashion and part of how people would express themselves, these you can actually find fairly easily, usually in museum collections or other curated collections. Again, it's been, a few hundred years. Fabric does not tend to do well over a long period of time, so some last and some don't, but the most beautiful examples of them have been preserved by different museum institutions and such. Whereas the blue and white masks, as I said, they were really part of fast fashion, and they were disposable. They are actually really hard to find these days, just because people would just use them and throw them out. So there was no attempt to keep them looking nice or preserve them in any way. So they're actually really, really hard to find now, and if you do see one come up in the marketplace, honestly, you can expect to pay easily thousands of dollars for one single mask. And as I said, that's because they didn't last despite what the materials they were made out of. And they're just, something people didn't think about it and didn't think of as worthy of preserving. So unfortunately, those kinds of masks are hard to find. But I have a little secret I'm going to share with you all. I actually own one. So let's talk a little bit about this mask that I have. When I was around 5, I think it was, my father decided he wanted to do some home renovations, like you do. And part of that involved taking out the walls, which were original to when the house was built in, I believe it was 2023, but I can't say for certain. It's been a while since I looked at the documentation. But what he found when he opened up one of the walls was an original COVID era box with, let's see if it'll show up because of my lights. No. There we go. An original COVID era disposable mask. So, let's talk about it for a little bit. It was originally in a box. The box was made out of wood paper and deteriorated and actually basically just disintegrated probably about 15 years ago now. It's, part of it is just, from having been sealed up for so long and then taken out, it's not surprising that it would have disintegrated. And wood paper is notoriously bad for preservation. But this is not made out of paper. It's also not made out of cotton, which is what was common for fashion masks. Cotton, sometimes you'll see silks, or some other. Generally, they're almost always completely natural fibers. Occasionally, you'll see like a synthetic fiber for the outermost layer. This, on the other hand, this is completely synthetic. There is no natural fiber in it at all. And it's also not a woven fabric. So this is part of why they are disposable, because they're not made to last long. They're made to be used and thrown out. So let's see. I don't want to touch it directly because I don't want to cause any further degradation or deterioration on the part of this. That's why it's wrapped up and kept, preserved. Because as I mentioned to you a couple minutes ago, these are actually really hard to get a hold of and can be really, really expensive to replace. So I'm going to very carefully hold it through the paper. Let's see if there we go. So if we look closely, you can see the texture of it and how it is not woven. And we're actually going to take a quick look. So when So Biased made her masks, she interpreted this white line up here as actual lace, the way it would have been done on other types of underwear. But as you can see, it's not lace, it's just how the edge of the mask was finished. And it's got its loops, and it's got that white band on the bottom as well. And there is a piece of wire in here to help hold the mask to a person's face as well. This is much more common in pre-manufactured masks like these rather than ones that people make for themselves as well. So this is one of my favorite things in my collection. So that's really all that I think needs to be said for this video. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to make yourself a mask, if you want to just have one for fun, or perhaps you want to do some early 20th century historical costuming, her tutorial is really great, so it's definitely worth using her tutorial for that. If you do want to try and make more of a fashion mask, which I also talked about, I highly recommend the link I will also put below, which is to the new Metropolitan Museum of Art's exhibit that they did, how long ago was it? 4 years ago now, I believe it was. All about fashion masks. A friend of mine actually helped curate it, so I highly recommend that exhibit. And I think that's all that needs to be said for now. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and have fun. Hey everyone, I am back again. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're feeling a little bit confused, just, check out today's date. I do want to send a huge thank you to Melissa of So Biased for not thinking it was completely crazy when I suggested doing this video based off of hers. So if you haven't checked out her channel, I highly recommend it. She does some absolutely beautiful 1940s vintage sewing, and she's also done some other things recently that are really, really pretty to look at. So I highly recommend that you go and check out her channel too and enjoy her videos if you haven't already. Thank you for watching here. I won't say if you want to see more things like this, subscribe, because this is, a one-off type of video. But there will be more fun things in the future on this channel. So, if you want to, subscribe and stick around, and I will see you again in the future. Bye.